Hi, this is David from the True Blue Sand blog, and today we actually have a videographer working with us. We got our favorite camera lady Susan out here working with us today, and what we're going to do is take down a dead locust tree. And one of the commenters on our YouTube channel asked about showing a forked tree or a broken tree being chained together. And that's one thing we're going to do here. We're going to do that before we do our setup for cutting it. So I'm going to come around here on this side and take a look at this. What we got a forked tree, and from the stump height to where that fork ends, or that fork begins, it's going to be just about 2 feet. That's kind of a critical distance. These fibers in wood will shear, and so if I got 2 feet or less, I'm concerned about when I wedge over about this side peeling off of this side, and I don't want that to happen. And of course, most people now have like these straps. I've got a good supply of chains, and I'm kind of old-fashioned. I like to just throw a chain around one. And your big problem you'll have with chains is when this thing hits the ground, they can get in a strain, and it's really hard to get it apart. And you don't want to get your saw into it. So, but you just remember that it's not a big deal. And if I can get this baby hooked up. More. Yeah, that's about all there is to that. That's it. Still not enough. Let's go one more. Just pulling the slack around every time I give that a pull. With a ratchet strap, it would be a little easier, I guess. But the chains were in the garage. I just grabbed them. There we go. And throw your extra chain over there. When you're cutting it up, just be sure to watch out for that. And that's pretty simple. Now we're going to look at what we got to do with this one. I could take this tree down a couple different ways, and it has back lean. If we bring this tree the way I am, it's going to tangle in the treetops right next to it. So I want to take it that way. If I go that way, I've got a little back lean. And looking at how we're going to set up our front and back, this is a 10-inch diameter tree. It's right at 10 inches DBH. So I want a hinge about 8 inches long or a little longer. And I can take my stick here, see where 8 inches is. I can have a hinge plenty long right there. My hinge will end here. The hinge will end there, and if I measure back to my wedging point, I've got a good solid 10 inches. So remember that. We're going to set this tree up into 10-inch segments so we can figure our back lean and see if we can handle it. So I'm going to have a good solid 10 inches, maybe more if I make everything right, but we're just figuring on 10 inches. And that's going to be our segment size. I know I've got a good solid 10 inches. So that's going to be our segment size for wedging. And what that means is if I raise the back of this tree 1 inch with wedges, at 10 inches up, this will move over 1 inch. At 20 inches up, it'll move over 2 inches. So if a tree's 500 inches tall, a 1 inch lift here will move the top over 50 inches. So you break that down into segments, and you can figure out what you got to do to wedge one over. Those segments are real important to remember. Here, gotta let that truck go by. A 50 segment tree is kind of what I always go to remember. On a 50 segment tree, you can handle up to about a maximum of 10 feet of back lean. and that's really at the ultimate max. You don't want to ever try to go past that. If you go up to a 60 segment tree, you know, taller, thinner tree, 60 segments, that tree's gained leverage against you, and you can only handle about 8 feet of back lean maximum. If you go up another 10 segments, you know, if it's a 70 segment tree, you're down to 6. As the tree gets taller and thinner, it's less, and every time you go up 10 segments, knock off 2 feet of what you could handle. And likewise, if you go down to a 40 segment tree, you might be able to handle as much as 12 on a good day. But anyway, so we've got 10 inches back here behind the hinge where we'll be wedging. So that's our segment size. Now I'm going to pace out and check the height on this tree and see how much back lean we have. So here we go. We've left 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 25 feet, and I measured this beforehand. And what you do is take your stick, put it by your eye, and if I put my hand right at the bottom of the tree and roll my eye up, that's right at 45 feet. I've got a 45-foot tall tree. Okay, a 45-foot tall tree is 540 inches. So I've got 540 inches up and a 10-inch wedging segment. So I can break that tree down into 54 segments. Now a 50 segment tree, I figure, you know, the maximum is 10 feet of back lean. 60 segment tree, 8 feet of back lean. Now we're going to look at our back lean. So we're somewhere, let's just say 8 feet max on back lean is what we can handle. And I'm going to use my stick here for a plumb bob, center it up on the tree, and I come down and I've got about 2 feet off center. I've got to move that tree about 2 feet to bring it up to balance. So that's easily done. We've got plenty of, we've got plenty of leverage to move that tree. It's only about 2 feet, and I figure about 8 feet would be the ultimate max on that. And if we put a 1-inch wedge in there on a 50 segment tree, a 1-inch wedge is going to move the top 50 inches, or a little over 4 feet. We need to move it 2 feet to balance. So the thickness of one wedge should tip that tree very easily. And you learn to do these things real quick. Figure out your segments, figure out how much back lean, how many inches, and how many inches you can get with one wedge. So we're ready to go. Now we're ready to put our face in it, ready to put our front face in. And it's a 10-inch tree, so we want to have the hinge about 1 inch thick, 10% of that. About 1 inch thick hinge. We want a hinge 8 inches long, which is 80% of 10. And we'll cut out half of the back, put a wedge in, cut out the other half, and then drive our wedges. And the camera will be working from this side because this is our escape route. We're going to be taking the tree off that way, and 135 degrees off of that is over here. So this is going to be our escape route over here on this side. So the camera is going to be shooting from here, so the camera lady is not out in front of the tree. So we're going to go over here and fire up and get going. Black locust, you might get a thorn in you, so I'm going to put gloves on. I don't always wear gloves when I'm cutting the tree, but black locust is not a bad idea. Now if the camera can come up here a minute, we'll look at what we have. I got to grab my stick so we can measure that. Grab my stick. Now we got the front of the hinge right here. Those two met very nicely. You always want those two faces to meet. And using a Biltmore stick, you use the log scale side. These are regular inches here on this side. That side's tree scale. Use the log scale for here. There's 0. And we've got a 10-inch hinge. So we've got a hinge that's 100% of the diameter at breast height. That's a very good hinge. The wood is nice and solid. So now we're ready to punch this and cut out half the back and put our wedges in. That's what we're going to do next. Come on, baby. Okay, let's see how we did. We'll grab my measurer again here. And I was shooting for a thickness of 1 inch. I just shot it straight through. And I think I usually get it a little thicker. But measure that, and I'm 1.5 inches. It'll tip, 1.5 inches thick on this end. So, okay, we're ready to stick a wedge in over here so the tree doesn't sit down on the saw. Okay, well, that's too close. I'll hit that with the saw. Let's knock that out and do that again. There we go. Anyway, you can see I cut to right there. We're going to cut from there forward and join that up behind that hinge. And then we'll be ready to wedge. Okay, here goes. Okay, she's cut loose, and I want my camera lady to move over here at 135. She needs to move before I move that tree. Okay, now put wedges in, and we'll start moving it. Are we ready?
No.
Okay, wait for the camera to get set up.
Okay.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Good enough. Okay, let's come up here and look at the stump and talk about that. I can raise my ears now so I won't shout so much. There we go. Okay, there's that black locust down. That's a dead one. This was the wedge I put in to keep it from sitting back on the stump. And we drove, it didn't quite go with one. Drove one in tight. We set up two so we get a little extra wedge. You can see the front cut was here, second cut was here to establish the front of that hinge. And okay, I got this end of the hinge right at 1 inch, and I could have closed this up a little bit. I'm right at 1.5 inches here, and you can see when it got too thick out here, we got a little fiber pull. On a firewood tree, that's not a problem. And the way you get that nice straight hinge is to run your saw in, dog it in, rotate up to your correct diameter, or punch it through like that. You can see where we punched through. Then we cut out this half. You can see the mark here where I cut out half of the back, set the wedge, and then cut this out and wedged it over. So anyway, that segment size business is something that's a really good thing to know. Yeah, look at this, 10 inches from the back of that to right here, 10 inches. That was our segment size. If you raise this 1 inch here, you come up 10 inches, it moves the front over 1 inch. You go up 20 inches, it moves it over 2 inches. So 45-foot tall tree, that's 540 inches. And if you raise this 1 inch, it moves the top of that tree over 54 inches. Now you can sometimes push one over that's at the max, but it's no fun. I don't recommend it. And you have to use extra shims in here under your wedges. You'll cut them out of wood sometimes. Those trees are no fun. Where that information will do you the most good, get these numbers in your head. 10 feet max for a 50, 8 feet max for a 60, 6 feet max for a 70 segment tree. Figure those segments, because what that does for you, it tells you how much side lean you can handle. And side lean will get you if you don't pay attention to it. When a tree is leaning back and you wedge it over, the entire length of this hinge is holding against the weight of that tree for you. So you've got a lot of strength there. I mean, that's a 1 inch thick piece of hardwood that's 10 inches, that's, let's see, how long is that? That's 10 inches long, I think. Yeah, 10 inches long. So you got a lot of fiber there holding you. Now, if however, you're fighting side lean, if you have side lean, half of this hinge is under tension and the other half is being compressed. So only half, if you've got side lean, only half of that hinge is holding against that side lean, the other half is under compression. So as you get more side lean, it's more likely to fail. And the number, I always tell people, learn those back lean numbers, because your side lean numbers are going to be somewhere less than half of that. And that's a number that's critical to figure on any tree with side lean. So that's why you want to learn those numbers. So just remember that. So this is a tree we could have easily handled about 8 feet of back lean. We could have handled maybe, on a good day, up to 4 feet of side lean. Always figure that a little short. 3 feet of side lean, I wouldn't be afraid of that. 8 feet of side, or 4 feet of side lean might have been too much. When a tree with side lean fails, the hinge rips out and the tree goes in an unplanned direction. So figure those numbers. The chain, turns out, wasn't necessary, but that didn't hurt anything. With the binder on there, I can get it off. What happens sometimes when you do this with a chain, things will bust up and this will get tight, and you just have a heck of a time getting the chain unhooked. On this one, it won't be a problem. So, but you know, that's a useful technique. I've used it a few times. A lot of times, if you can just make your cuts fast and get out of the way, you're good enough. So, anyway, thank you for visiting. If you have any questions, put them in comments, and we will catch you on another one. See you later. Anyway, you can see I cut to right there. So we're going to cut from there forward and join that up behind that hinge. And then we'll be ready to wedge. Okay, here goes. Okay, she's cut loose, and I want my camera lady to move over here at 135. She needs to move before I move that tree. Okay, now we're going to put wedges in and start moving it. Are we ready? Okay, waiting for the camera to get set up. Are we ready? And there we go. Well, good enough.